These bar attorneys are held to such a higher standard than Steve and I are, or even you, Sean, for that matter, because we're not members of that association. Thank the Lord above. No offense, Dr. Graves.
No problem.
That, and I'm sure Dr. Graves will agree, that association has done more to corrupt this country than anything else that I can think of, because they have taken our beautiful system of justice and turned it upside down on its head.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. The information shared in this interview could literally change your life and the world. You want to take your power back? Well, this is how. That was my friend James Tracy. He, Stephen Soha, and Dr. Frederick Graves joined me to discuss how to use the courts to take our power back, something Max Egan just spoke about in his latest video.
This is what they do. They just get you in there and they completely bamboozle you with the costs of the legal system, and they make sure you can never get anything done. You can never win. Yeah, it's the wrong way to go about it. I mean, you don't want to go in there with lawyers and that sort of stuff. You need to go into these sort of places and know that you're living flesh and blood and speak for yourself.
How's that for serendipity? I recorded this interview with these fine gentlemen the same day Max Egan released this video saying just that. Well, Max is right, and here's how you do it, friends. Before we start, just a quick word about our sponsor. Well, as you all know now, studies show our appearance directly affects our mental health. Many anti-aging supplements found on store shelves try to capitalize on that, but most fall short. This is because they fail at targeting the root of the problem. You see, the newest trend in anti-aging supplements is collagen. Research shows a good collagen supplement can help make hair stronger and skin more youthful while supporting healthy joints, bone, and gut health. But don't run to the store and buy the first collagen supplement you see. Grab a bag of Ageless Multi-Collagen, which can only be purchased online. Ageless Multi-Collagen's ingredients are held to the highest quality standards in the collagen industry. It is some of the purest quality collagen you can get. I've unlocked a deal for my audience so you can get up to 51% off your order by going to healthwithsgt.com. It's non-GMO, free of artificial colors, and you get a 60-day money-back guarantee. I'll make it really simple. The link is below. Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you so very much for tuning in. It's Sean from SGT Report. Guys, I'm delighted to have this conversation today because what we want to teach everyone listening is that power comes from the people. So let people know the power they have. Those are essentially the words of Dr. Frederick Graves, and I'm happy to introduce him right now. Fred, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, good to be here. Let's convince some people.
Well, we have to take our country back. And my friends, Stephen Soha and James Tracy, have followed your work and have learned from you, Dr. Graves. I want you to know that. Let's welcome these guys back. James, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today and making time. Stephen, same to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean. Summer's finally here, and I'm happy.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, indeed. Hallelujah. All right. I'd be remiss here, guys, if I didn't show Dr. Graves' website, How to Win in Court with or Without a Lawyer. And believe me, he will teach you how to do so without being a lawyer. And you can sign up and take his course here and learn.
And he's got, that guy's got hair.
That guy had hair. This guy no longer has hair. Look, none of us are getting any younger, Dr. Graves. Let me be the first to say that as a longtime runner who's now been diagnosed with arthritis in my left knee. It's a bitter pill. But yeah, we all try to do the best we can, and we're all trying to learn, and you've helped us a lot to that degree. So I would like James and Stephen to kind of explain a little bit how common men like us can use the courts to get our power back and to hold people accountable. James, I know you're working on a couple of different things. Stephen, you've shared knowledge that has inspired others to take action. Which one of you would like to talk a little bit about using the court and understanding, not being intimidated by the system, but instead using the system to take our power back? James, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I was very much like, I would say, every other average American that was deathly afraid of our legal system. You'd get something in the mail from an attorney, or you'd have someone show up on your porch and they'd hand you a copy of a complaint and the summons that says you're being served. I mean, that's a terrifying experience for the average everyday American who's never stepped foot into the system and has no clue what they're doing. I'll be the first to admit that I was one of those naive people myself. Um, when I had a falling out when I owned a business and I was being sued to perform on a contract that I was unable to perform on due to the financial constraints at the time. So that was scary. I mean, I didn't know what to do. And so the first thing I did was what we're told to do, go out and find a lawyer. So I went and found a lawyer, and I thought the problem was taken care of. But you know, in hindsight, as I looked at that, I realized that attorney, and Dr. Graves, I'm sure, will be the first to admit this, that attorney didn't have my best interest at heart. He only cared about securing the retainer I was about to pay him. So there is a big misconception that and I'm not saying all attorneys are like this. Probably about 96% are. But no, in all seriousness, most attorneys are only in it for that retainer fee. They really could care less about the outcome of your case. Now, there are those attorneys who do care and who will work regardless of whatever the court of public opinion is, but they are few and far between. And the misconception is that when you hire an attorney, that attorney has a fiduciary duty to you. You know, fiduciary meaning that they must do what's in your best interest, like, for example, a real estate agent or a doctor or something of that nature. The reality is that they don't. And correct me if I'm way off base here, Dr. Graves, but their primary fiduciary duty is to the Bar Association, either the state or the American Bar Association. And that's why when you see some of these attorneys, when they walk into court, you know, they don't have that bulldog type attitude when there's a judge that's not going to take any garbage from them, because they know that judge can strip their bar card at the stroke of a pen. So I was one of those I was one of those Americans. You know, I was concerned, and I first heard Dr. Graves. Well, I heard about Dr. Graves from my good friend Alphonse Fagiolo, who I know you've talked with, Sean. And Alphonse spoke highly of how to win in court. And I'm like, well, hey, this sounds like something I need to get involved with, especially if I'm going to be moving a case through any court. It doesn't matter if it's a federal court or a state court. I need to know how the courts operate. I need to know, you know, what a motion is. I need to know how to move a court properly. And what I love about that website, and if you want to throw it back up on the screen again, Sean, it's a great website we can go through just to kind of give a high level overview, but it really is simple and easy to follow. Everything that Dr. Graves has in here about the entire law system. He talks about tactics. He talks about, you know, how to control judges, how to do all of these things. Everything that you see on the left-hand side there is included. Sample legal forms, how to file motions move to court. See, I love his little pictures there. Don't get motion sickness. and it's funny. That's right. And it's funny because, you know, when you file a lawsuit, that's absolutely very first thing that happens is the flurry of motions. And so don't get motion sickness. This is part of the process. You just have to know how this works. And so I refer back to Dr. Graves' course all the time. And even seasoned veterans who have secured millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements refer back to Dr. Graves' course, because it does just what he says his mission is to do, is to put the power back in the hands of the people. Mm-hmm. And when we realize the power we do have and how we can move courts and how these seasoned attorneys are deathly scared to death of a knowledgeable pro se, I tell you what, it's amazing. And I'll give you just a quick example. I'm moving litigation through federal court here in the state of Utah, in the Federal District Court of Utah. The attorney that's representing my opponents, the defendants, she was awarded the Bar Attorney of the Year last year. So that's the highest honor that she could get. And I caught her doing a number of different things. Number one, I caught her committing perjury on the record. I caught her filing frivolous motions. I caught her attempting to admit evidence that doesn't exist. Like Dr. Graves just said, everything is about getting admissible evidence. So the Bar Attorney of the Year did three things, all of which are sanctionable, one of which is a felony, by the way. And I let her boss know it. I had a meeting with the Attorney General here and his chief of staff last week with his chief of staff last week. And I said, hey, aren't they supposed to be the best of the best attorneys in the state? I'm running circles around her, and I'm a little old pro se. I don't even have a college degree. Everything that I learned from Dr. Graves. I learned from Alphonse. I learned from Steve Emerson. I learned from all my friends, Randy Kelton in Texas. I learned from all these people who are willing to share this information to little old me, Mr. Pro Se. And I'm making this woman look like a roughshod. So much so, this is going to make you laugh, Dr. Graves. We filed a motion for court-ordered non-binding mediation. Now, let me tell you, is it wise to oppose a motion like that? Generally speaking, when I've already caught you in perjury and everything else, I mean, I'm giving the court a lifeline here. She promptly filed an opposition to it, and basically she was pouting, saying, well, so-and-so filed bar grievances against me, and so-and-so filed this against me, and so-and-so did this, and we have no intentions of ever wanting to meet with these people. And I was laughing. I mean, Steve, you know, I posted that in the chat. So I was just laughing. I'm like, okay, excuse me, I guess we know who the adult in the room is here. But my point with this being, Sean, is I never would have known how to properly write a motion, how to find controlling case law to support my facts and allegations. I would never be able to find any of that if it had been for Dr. Graves' course. Wow. So I'll turn it over to Steve and see what he can say to add to that.
Well, I agree completely, James. And if you think about it, I've had my butt kicked in the family court system for years over my oldest child, and it never went my way. There's a lot of times the attorneys went in there without me, and they just made an agreement with the judge and all sorts of. But I had no idea how it worked. I just paid that guy and hoped he was going to do the best he could do for me. But he's also running all over doing the best he could do for everybody else, or he just cares about the money he's getting. But nobody's going to work harder for you than you are going to work for yourself. So here's where we come down to this. We'll catch things that most attorneys won't catch. We will read the rules that they're not going to read just because they get away with doing everything wrong, or the easy way that they're not even trying to do right because their buddies let them go, because they're all in that big club that we're not part of, you know. And as Randy says, they're all pigs with their snouts in the same trough. They're all on the same team. I mean, regardless of if they're your attorney or the state's attorney or whatever, they're still playing the same team or on the same team. And once we figure out how to play on their field, but play it the right way by the rules, then it causes a big problem for them. Yes. And they don't like it, but I enjoy it personally. It's fun showing them, hey, you're screwing up here. You're not following this rule. You're not following this. You're not doing this. And then when you put that court or that attorney or whoever in a very unattainable position where they have to dismiss or do whatever, that's very powerful as far as you and me and anybody else wanting to take this on. And it might be over something stupid. You know, I've got this court in a neighboring county that I'm going to have a federal lawsuit against over a traffic ticket. It was just, they're going to try and jack me for $160. Now, most people aren't going to take the time. They just pay it and be on their way. But I found them in operating illegally for the last 9 years. And only because I started paying attention to Dr. Graves, Alphonse, Randy, and pretty much the same time you did, James, when you saw Alphonse and Crow on Sean's show about a year ago. And look at where we are now. You're moving several cases in federal court and kicking the crap out of an assistant AG. And, you know, I'm going to have this court. They're going to be in trouble. You know, I want discovery requests. I want every case prosecuted in the last 9 years since they've been out of compliance with the rules of superintendents. You know, I can't just go and buy a building and say, hey, this is a court now. I got my buddy holding a gun here. He's my bailiff. We're just going to start issuing orders. There's rules you have to follow. They come down from the legislature, you know, and they delegated the power to the state Supreme Court to create rules. And then all the local courts have to follow them. They have to draft their own rules and they have to follow those rules. When they don't follow those rules, what are they? They're not a court anymore. But where do you get redress? You got to go higher, right? You got to go to federal court because a state court is probably going to run interference for them. But federal racketeering lawsuits, you have a chain now, you know, and it's you got to use what you got. And I mean, I'm passionate about this, just like you are, just like Alphonse is, because there's a lot of power for we the people when we do it right. And that's what I enjoy. I will agree with Randy. Politics is going to win, but when you got a little Republican county and you got a Democrat-controlled Department of Justice, it's going to be bad news for them.
Amen.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
you're fooling yourself if you don't think politics plays into this, because it absolutely does. And that's Randy Kelton's number one thing. He says at the end of the day, it's all politics.
yep.
It's all politics. Like I know you mentioned this, and I think Crow and Alphonse mentioned this on that episode, that Randy was instrumental in getting the mask mandate lifted in Texas, because he filed a 156 or 155 page criminal complaint with an outgoing district attorney who happened to be a Democrat, by the way. And he just happened to hand that to a grand jury foreman. So once the governor caught wind of that, he was looking for any reason he could to end these mandates. That was it.
Right.
That was it. He was going along to get along, but like every other governor across this country did. And he's like, give me a reason, give me an excuse, give me something I can use to terminate these. Oh, perfect. That'll work.
That's right. And that's the point of the conversation from my perspective, is we can all take steps, and you never know when the step you took might inspire something big to happen. And Dr. Graves, how does this make you feel listening to these two intelligent gentlemen say that they've learned so much from you?
It's very pleasing, of course. As you were talking about the rules, I remembered something that happened to me long before I went to law school. I was teaching in a Christian school in Orlando, and for some strange reason, a 4-star Marine Corps general, vice commandant actually of the Marine Corps, his name was Lewis Walt. He came to the school to see me and to talk to my 9th grade boys' Bible class. And afterwards, he invited me to his home. I don't know how he knew anything about me, but apparently he did. I had written some things. I'd actually passed out leaflets in Key West, door to door, and done all kinds of crazy things, trying to raise people's awareness about matters that I really didn't know much about at that time. I hadn't gone to law school, but I'd lived on sailboats where I had no TV, so I had to read books. So I read Franklin and Woolman and Penn and Marcus Aurelius and all these George Washington people, while other folks were watching TV. So I had written something. I assumed that's where he came from. So we were at his house, just the two of us, and surrounded by all these Japanese lacquered furniture and just beautiful stuff. And here, this big-chested fellow who allegedly, I was told by the editor of the Orlando Sentinel, that he'd spent more time on the American battlefield than any living American. And he was spending time with little old me. And he started telling me about what America is from his point of view, of watching his boys being all shot up and not getting to come home. And he was telling me stories about what was happening in Vietnam when they couldn't shoot rockets until a certain hour. And he said that the enemy would wrap their feet in rags so they wouldn't be heard coming across the rice paddies. And I looked up at the old man, and there were tears falling down his face. And he said to me, he gave me a book that day that he had written called The 11th Hour. Lewis, Lewis, Lewis Walt, U.S. Marine Corps, retired. And he wrote in the flyleaf, he said, Frederick, never give up the fight. And as I look back on that, I still don't understand, how did he know that I was trying to fight that fight, but doing it with a pen. And I love the old man, understand that he's passed away. But he gave me this spirit, I guess it is, that when you go to court, you don't have an obligation to the bar. You have an obligation for not just justice, but you have an obligation for what this nation was built on or dedicated to, at least theoretically. That was the idea that William Penn had when he called it the holy experiment. George Washington called it the grand experiment. And today, people that haven't read these books that I pretty much had to read to be entertained on the sailboat, they don't have any idea. So we are a nation of rules. And my hair's going to start catching fire again. It's by God, you're going to obey the rules. I'll make you obey the rules, whether you're a judge or you're a lawyer or you're the Florida bar trying to get rid of me, which they haven't been able to do yet, because they know they have a problem. They have continuing legal education classes that we're supposed to take every so many years to keep our licenses. And in those classes, they talk about the problems of lawyers who lie and cheat and steal and how terrible it is. But you wonderful people are catching on, excuse me for putting it that way, but you are, you're catching on to the idea that by God, there's rules. And
Yes.
if these people won't obey the rules, then we're going to take them to task. But instead of setting fire to police cars, we're going to use our pens and our computers and tools like my course. And if you can learn this somewhere else, learn it somewhere else. I don't care, but learn it for heaven's sake. And tell the single moms who are having their children taken away, or the elderly couple that's losing their home, or the young couple that's trying to start a business and being screwed with, and tell the world that, the hope of peace has to do with understanding there's a set of rules, and when you have rules, everybody has to obey. And I'm proud of you guys. I'm really, really proud of you and thankful that you're telling other people. And I just want to get, if we can just get a little bit above, the point of litigation. Litigation is important. It lays a foundation. But let's
Yes.
go above that and get a little philosophical or super patriotic if you want to, and tell the world, by God, there's rules and you're going to obey them.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I may, guys, let me just ask this. It's one thing to know how to use the courts, and it's another thing to know when it's appropriate to use the courts. And when Dr. Graves and I were on for about an hour getting to know each other a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned mask mandates for kids in schools, things that make me angry, forced vaccinations on doctors and nurses and healthcare frontline people, et cetera, lockdowns, which I think are coming again probably this fall and winter. Stephen or James, could you guys provide me with some examples, concrete examples of how and when somebody can and should use the courts to get justice and to hold people accountable to make them follow the rules?
I'll give you a great example, Sean, and it actually pertains into my case even too. So I apologize, Stephen, if you don't mind. I'm going to share my screen here. Well, first of all, let me give you some background. So there was a gentleman in Louisiana. He was actually a pastor who, when the pandemic first started, the governor out with his executive orders, and he ordered every religious church closed. You couldn't have more than 10 or whatever. I don't know where they came up with these numbers. It was ridiculous. This guy basically said, I'm sorry, I have a constitutionally guaranteed right to practice my religion how I see fit, so you can go pound sand. Well, long story short, they arrested him, charged him with some type of a ridiculous crime that didn't fit the actual crime. He was being prosecuted criminally, and he appealed it to the Louisiana State Supreme Court. They issued a ruling a few weeks ago, and I want to share this ruling with you.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
So I don't know if you can see my screen here, but basically the justices of the Louisiana Supreme Court, now I apologize, I don't remember exactly how many justices they have on their court. Here in Utah, we have 5 justices. I don't know how every court, if it's different, if they do 3, 5, 7, I'm not sure, but they had 5 justices, and they had 3 justices that agreed or agreed with the opinion. They had 2 that dissented, meaning they didn't agree with the opinion. The 3 that agreed basically came out and said, in short, it is unconstitutional to prevent someone to practice their religion as they see fit in the name of a pandemic. And I'm not, this is a 22-page opinion. I downloaded this from Louisiana State Supreme Court directly. Anybody can find it. I'm willing to bet you've heard nothing about this in the news, because this sets a major precedent across this country. And they actually put this case out for publication. So Dr. Graves can talk a little bit more about what that means, and I'll let him do that. But In the order, I'm going to read just a couple of these last paragraphs here because it's very damning information to the other side. And it says here, they were talking about one of the executive orders that was issued by the governor. It says it's difficult to characterize these orders, one that allows for over 100 exemptions, as blunt or lacking fine distinctions. Both orders crafted exemptions for a multitude of secular activities. While every exempt job is important, the state offers no explanation for attributing less importance to the fundamental right to exercise one's religion.
Mhm.
Our fundamental constitutional rights are not so numerous to prevent their consideration when constructing restrictions. The state must be sensitive to their possible infringement. We further agree that early in this pandemic, state officials had to respond quickly and decisively to an evolving and uncertain situation. In those early weeks, authorities did not have the luxury of waiting for therapeutics, vaccines, or additional expertise gathered from comprehensive studies or revealed by the passage of time. It was, by definition, an emergency. State officials had to act quickly and did so in an effort to curtail one of the greatest public health emergencies ever confronted. We do not minimize the magnitude of that challenge, nor with the benefit of hindsight do we judge the effectiveness of measures undertaken early in the crisis. Rather, we are called upon to determine whether some of those actions violated a party's fundamental constitutional right. Even in a pandemic, the Constitution cannot be put away and forgotten. Government is not free to disregard the First Amendment in times of crisis. By the way, this was a Supreme Court decision that was issued by Justice Gorsuch regarding the Roman Catholic Diocese. We reject any contention that early in a crisis, the Constitution's protection of fundamental rights must always yield to the needs of the state to respond to the crisis. A public health emergency does not relegate the First Amendment to a proposition or allow violations thereof to be judged on a sliding scale of constitutionality. The infringement of the fundamental right of the free exercise of religion, whether in times of crisis or calm, must always be strictly scrutinized by our courts. This is my favorite part, the last paragraph. Pandemic or not, this court cannot look the other way when the state infringes upon a citizen's fundamental right to exercise his religion. All government originates with the people, is founded on their will alone, and is instituted to protect the rights of the individual and for the good of the whole. This is in the Louisiana Constitution. In granting power to the government, our citizens not only reserve the right to freely exercise religion, they instructed that this right be preserved inviolate by the state. As judges, we have no more solemn duty than to protect the fundamental rights reserved by the people from government overreach. The prohibitions in the executive orders at issue violate defendant's fundamental right to exercise his religion. They do not survive strict scrutiny based on limited evidence in the record. They are unconstitutional as applied to the defendant.
Good,
Hmm.
good.
Can I
By
ask
the
a
way,
question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, by the way, he filed a motion to quash. That's covered in Dr. Graves' course. He filed a motion to quash their ridiculous charges, and he took this all the way to the Louisiana State Supreme Court, and they granted it.
And
Now-
let's make a point here too. Okay, and I just wish 100 million people could hear what we're saying right now. This happened because somebody went to court. It
Yep.
didn't happen by setting fire to a police car or breaking into some privately owned shoe store and stealing all the shoes and thinking that's going to make the world better, as we saw too much of, last year, or the year before, in Missouri. The people have this power to do things, and also, as you were reading that, James, you had to understand that the fellow that was writing, or the lady, or whoever it was that was writing that opinion, has probably been a judge for a while. You don't get up that high, and that's one good thing about our system, is that we like to think that by the time you get up to be a Supreme Court justice, there's at least a better chance that you have a brain in your head. And this man obviously does. It's very well written, very well reasoned, and it's not political. This is somebody who understands the things that I read in all those dusty old books. And and God bless you for bringing that to our attention. And we have to continue to remind people that all this anger and having emails and starting websites and the sky is falling and all this isn't getting us anywhere. But what does get us somewhere is when people will learn how to write a pleading, like you and Stephen and Sean know how to do. And you go to court and now somebody has to answer questions. And if you play the game correctly and put your foot down and remember General Walt, you won't put up with any nonsense, and they'll have to obey the rules. And if they have to obey the rules and the law's on your side and you get the evidence into the record, shazam, you win.
Well, and if I may, I don't know how to write a pleading. I'm learning along with a lot of the audience here. So you three gentlemen are really helping us begin to understand how we can take back our power by using the courts. So I appreciate having this roundtable for that very reason. And so what is the significance of a state Supreme Court ruling like that one, James, in Louisiana, as it pertains to future lockdowns in future situations where out of control states might say, yeah, you guys can't go to church anymore because of the boogeyman virus, boogeyman X. How does this work? State Supreme Court decisions. You say it's a precedent, but is it only a precedent for Louisiana, or can that ruling be used in other states that turn tyrannical?
Well, here's the beautiful thing about our Constitution. So the founders, when they originally put the Constitution together and they proposed the first 10 amendments known as the Bill of Rights, they didn't know everything, obviously. So they left the provision in there that if we needed to add amendments to this down the road, we could. Obviously, we have the 13th and the 14th Amendments, which the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. The 14th Amendment, in my opinion, is one of the most crucial amendments ever passed, because at the time it was passed, you have to remember, go back to just post-Civil War. We're trying to rebuild this country that's been torn to pieces. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead at the time, maybe even close to 1 million. I can't remember exactly. It was a terrible time. And the individuals who sat down to write that amendment, now mind you, it's not an easy thing to get an amendment passed, by the way. You got to get 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate to pass it, and you have to get 2/3 of the states to ratify it. So today, that'd be 36 states would have to ratify that in their own individual congressional conferences. So it wasn't an easy thing to do, and that was by design. The founders didn't want somebody that had too much tyrannical power to be able to do something. So, not to get off on a tangent, there's been a lot of people worried about these amendments that were proposed by the Biden administration to the World Health Organization. And like Randy Kelton says, I can use that declaration for toilet paper because that's about what it is. That's how much authority that man who thinks he's in charge, or who doesn't even know what he's doing half the time, he has no clue. Now, the 14th Amendment has a number of different sections, and I can't remember off the top of my head. Steve, help me out. Is it section 3 or section? There's an equal protections clause of the 14th Amendment, which says if one state determines activity in that state is unconstitutional, that action can be held unconstitutional in every state of the union. So that's the precedent that this ruling sets from the Louisiana State Supreme Court. We now have it on the record that justices from the Supreme Court of Louisiana have determined that COVID restrictions of any kind related to a pandemic that violate their citizens' First Amendment rights are unconstitutional. So to your question, what happens if they try to do this again? Well, hey, we've already got Supreme Court precedent. We can just throw that back in their face. And if they try to shut us down, well, then now we have, as Dr. Graves likes to say, now we have a massive cause of action, and somebody's going to be paying us a fat check.
Along with criminal complaints and everything else.
Oh, it's nobody told me this would be this much fun. Dr. Graves, you need to let people know it is a lot of fun to take these
You let people know.
forward.
I can't. I'm getting old. I won't be here forever, but you fellas can, certainly. My gosh. Yeah, keep the ball rolling. Pass out the ammunition.
Let me ask. Go ahead.
Why didn't somebody tell you this a long time ago?
I don't know.
Why?
I know. You know, and this is one of the things that I'm passionate about, because I know Dr. Graves is he would love to get this course taught at the school level, you know, maybe to juniors or seniors in high school. There's a lot of things that we should have been taught when we were in school that we weren't taught, that we just have to learn out on the road. And using the people's house, which is not your state capitol buildings, by the way, that's your courthouses. Those are the people's houses. That's where you go to get a redress.
I love it.
Grievances. You don't go to the state capitol and petition your do nothing legislators, not unless you have a checkbook that you're willing to dole out, because that's what they do. Whoever can write the largest check gets what they want. This is what I love about this great country. Like Dr. Graves said, so many good men and women have fought and bled and died to preserve. They preserved my right to file a petition or a pleading in a court and take somebody to task. Now, I'll bring this full circle. I mentioned that I am litigating in federal court right now against a couple of school districts based on violations. One of my claims is a violation of my First Amendment rights, my right to practice my religion as I see fit. Now, I tell you, or I ask you, how does this decision just handed down affect my case now? Well, it's the hammer. Boom, done. Because what happens, there's another little thing you'll learn in Dr. Graves' course, this thing called collateral estoppel. What it means is that if I take a position on the record, I cannot deviate from that position down the road. So guess what the first position my opposition took when I filed my complaint? Their position was the COVID restrictions were not unconstitutional. Well, wait a minute. What did we just read?
Uh-oh.
What did we just read? The Supreme Court justices of Louisiana just said that they were. And this, you guys, this is what I'm saying is I sent an email to this attorney and I gave her a copy of this opinion. And I said, hey, by the way, you're on the record as saying this is not unconstitutional. These justices disagree with you. This applies to my case through the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Do you want to maybe talk about mediation now? Or are you going to put your heels in the sand and make a judge take your bar card from you? Because that's where it's going.
How do you have so much confidence in a corrupt system? See, here's where I really can learn from you guys. You're a very, very confident guy, James, and you're obviously very intelligent. You too, Stephen, and of course, the wonderful Dr. Graves. But how do you have so much confidence in what you just said? Because to me, and to so many of us listening, the courts are corrupt, but you have this confidence in the rule of law.
Well,
not completely. Okay, fair enough.
Let me jump in. Here's a thought. Okay. Do any of you play golf? Okay.
I love it.
I don't. They don't want me out there because they don't know where the ball's going to go. I could kill someone. Anyway, but there are rules.
Yes.
Now, if you're playing golf with somebody else and you got $100 on the game or whatever, and he's picking up the ball and putting it where he wants to put it, you don't have to pay it because there are rules. What you said earlier, if we go back just a little bit, I didn't go to law school. I was 39 years old when I went to law school. I'd seen the elephants. You know, I wasn't wet back here in any way. And yet a lot of people were. They were, 21, 22 years old. And we were intimidated over and over and over again. Ooh, the bar. Watch out for the bar. Watch out for those judges. Bad things could happen to you. And it didn't mean anything to me. I didn't care. So I was weird. I mean, my wife says I'm weird. Anyway, I don't care. But the thing is, we were intimidated, and so many lawyers go out and they are terrified of losing their bar license. But what I found out, because of General Walt, I'll give him a lot of credit here, and the spirit that was in him, I went to court and I made everybody play by the rules. And what happened was the judges respected me. I got what I wanted pretty much routinely. And anytime I didn't get what I wanted is because I made a mistake. I didn't dot an I or cross a T. I believe that lawyers are self-interested like the rest of us. They're going to do what's in their own best interest. but I don't believe that the system is corrupt, because to me, the system is a set of rules, just like the game of golf.
Yes.
Getting out there hitting balls, that's not the game. The game is written in a book somewhere, rules of golf.
Okay.
The game of court is written in a book, and you can hold their feet to the fire and force them to do what's right. And I think that's the beauty of the system. Yeah, there's a lot of corruption. We need to understand there's a whole lot of corruption. I had fun setting fire to people. I really did. I had lawyers retire, become real estate agents. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Put one person in jail because he wouldn't answer a question. But the thing is, we have this power because there are rules. And this nation is a nation of rules. And the rule of law and the principles and practices of due process are what that flag flying out in front of my house stands for. And we just need to get people to understand that and get away from this idea, oh, well, the courts are all corrupt. Because if we keep saying that, why would anybody want to even give it a try? But obviously people, like James and Stephen, they're giving it a try and they're getting results because they are doing it according to the rules and making everybody play by the rules. So we need to just realize that. And one other thing, forgive me, but we talk about that the White House has power, the legislature has power, the Congress has power, and apparently nobody stops to realize that the real power in this country is 9 people in Washington who sit on the big long bench and wear black robes. They can overrule everybody.
Yep.
And it's real hard for anybody to overrule them.
Yeah.
And when a judge, like I said about the fellow that went to jail because he wouldn't answer my question, I moved the court. I went through the steps: motion to show cause, motion for contempt, the whole thing, and the judge issued a bench warrant. That becomes law. Once a judge signs an order, it's law, just like what the Congress or the legislature passes a law. And when that justice signed that opinion that James just shared with us, that is law. That's just as much the law as anything that could come out of the White House, maybe even more.
Yeah.
We just need to educate the people. And thank you for mentioning that earlier, James. I want to start in the first grade. I want to start teaching, the children in the first grade that a thing similar is never exactly the same. Oranges and apples and bananas, they're all fruit, but they're not the same. And get the children to be able to think like they need to be thinking. We've completely dropped the ball on that. We're teaching people trigonometry and algebra. And when is the last time any of us cared about the different parts of a mitochondria?
What's a mitochondria again?
Exactly. We need to teach justice in our schools.
Well, actually, right now in the schools, they're too busy teaching children about Transgender Day.
Wow.
We don't have time to go into that discussion, Sean.
He's really going to catch on fire now.
That's when my hair caught on fire last 2 weeks ago.
Hey, Stephen, I think you have a soundbite you might want to play in a minute, but if you don't mind, can I just finish this up with James? James, where does your confidence come in that particular case? So this person, this opposition, this highly decorated trial lawyer continues to screw up. She perjures herself. You try to give her an out. She won't take it.
Yeah.
Where do you get your confidence?
Well, just like Dr. Graves said, is the rules. The rules rule. So what people don't understand, every single court in this country, whether it's your justice court, I call them injustice courts here. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Whether it's your local district court, your local court of appeals, your state Supreme Court, federal district court, the circuit court of appeals, or the United States Supreme Court, they all have rules that were written and were voted upon by the judges, which make them law.
Right.
That's a law just as much as it is if 260 idiots get together and say, well, I think we should ban Twinkies on Wednesdays because we don't want people getting fat on Wednesdays. We want to get fat on Thursdays. Okay, let's go ahead and they vote on that. And the Senate thinks it's a good idea. And Mr. Governor says, well, Hostess just gave me $500,000 just to repeal that. You know what I'm going. Okay, Hostess, I think they're actually out of business. I apologize, but you know what I'm saying. It's law just the same. But what people don't understand is that these attorneys, these bar attorneys, are held to such a higher standard than Steve and I are, or even you, Sean, for that matter, because we're not members of that association. Thank the Lord above. No offense, Dr. Graves.
No problem.
That, and I'm sure Dr. Graves will agree, that association has done more to corrupt this country than anything else that I can think of, because they have taken our beautiful system of justice and turned it upside down on its head.
Thank you.
And they have taken good men and women and run them through the ringer, thinking these men and women are thinking that their constitutionally secured rights are being preserved, when in reality they are not even close. And that's a conversation we can talk about another day, Sean, because it's something we absolutely do need to talk about. There's a difference between a constitutional court of record, an Article 3 court, and an administrative court, which is an Article 1 court. There's a difference. And people don't realize when they're in an administrative court compared to a constitutional court of record. People don't realize how can a prosecution start off with an information or a citation when the Fifth Amendment's very clear that no one can be held for a capital or infamous crime except upon a presentment or an indictment from a grand jury. So if I'm being prosecuted criminally and I just received something in the mail that says complaint or says summons, hold on a second, I'm confused. And this is what I'm talking about. They have taken our beautiful system of justice and turned it upside down and have confused the heck out of people. And this is why we're in. So you ask, how do I have the confidence? Because I read the rules. I read the rules.
Let me jump in real quick. I keep remembering this.
Sure.
The rules of evidence. You already know this, but people listening don't know it. The rules of evidence in every federal case, criminal case, civil case, tax case, doesn't matter. 19 pages. 19 pages. And some of that is commentary on the rules, trying to explain the rule. There'll be a little extra writing about here's the rule, which is maybe a sentence or two, and then maybe a paragraph explaining the rule. 19 pages. And the American public has no idea.
Exactly.
It's crazy. And yet,
exactly.
Hopefully, if I drop dead today, you fellows will just see to it that the American public does wake up and gets this and begins to understand it. If you can't enforce your rights, you don't have any. And if you don't know how to go to court, you can't enforce your rights. And if you want to know the rules of evidence, we probably learn all of them in a couple hours if you just make an effort.
It's real easy. Yep. I'll give you a quick example on my case real quick. So the opposing attorney is claiming evidence that she or my defendants do not have personal knowledge of.
Oh, well.
So look this up, guys. It's rules of evidence, rule 602. It's the same in the Fed as it is in the state. Need for personal knowledge. If I'm going to walk into court and claim something exists, I must have personal knowledge of it, and I must be able to prove it. That's how I caught her.
Good.
That's how I caught her. She was claiming something existed that she has no personal knowledge of and cannot prove it. So I called her out on it, and she got ticked off when I did.
Oh, well.
I don't care. I'm not dangling by my bar card when I walk into that courtroom.
That's right.
And you are. And you asked the question, Sean, was like, well, how do we know we're going to get justice in these? Well, this is the other thing that Dr. Graves teaches in his course is there is a way that you can write your pleadings and your motions that the judge is going to see, crap, this guy's setting me up for appeal.
Yep.
I don't want to be overturned on appeal. I can see the writing on the wall. And that's exactly what I've done with this. I have basically held the feet to the fire and said, hey, this attorney didn't do this. The rules state this. They didn't do it. They didn't do this. The rules state this. They didn't do it. I don't care how long she's been practicing law. I'm a little old pro se with a less than a year experience, and I'm wiping the floor with her and having fun doing it. My point is,
James and General Walt has tears rolling down his face.
Well, God bless men like General Walt.
Yeah.
I've never served in the armed services, and I always wanted to, but I never did. My parents wouldn't let me in. Long story, I have so much respect and faith for men and women who have served our country honorably and who went to fight some of these political wars, because that's what a lot of them were. Like General Walt told you, Dr. Graves.
Definitely. Yep.
So when I haven't even, and here's full disclosure, I've never even stepped foot into a federal courthouse. Never even been in one. Everything I've done has been through writing, and I love it. I can sit down at my computer, I can take my time, I can research case law, I can look at American jurisprudence and see what the controlling case law is on an issue. I can do all of that. And I can do all of that because we have this beautiful technology available to us now in the time that we live, more so than 30, 40 years ago.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, guys. This conversation, I didn't know exactly where it would go, but I had faith, sort of a God thing, that it was going to go exactly how it should go. And this conversation is going to inspire many who are listening to get on board and learn how to use the courts and do exactly what Stephen, Dr. Graves, and James are doing. And it's so powerful. I'm so glad to be able to bring this to the public. And anyone listening, share it far and wide, re-upload it. I don't care. Share it on your channels, but get the word out. This stuff is so important.
Please.
And I do have a follow-up question on that Louisiana State Supreme Court decision. But Stephen, thank you for being so patient. Do you have anything you wanted to share? Was there a soundbite that you'd mentioned early on, maybe before I hit record?
Yeah, this was just, hopefully it plays it loud enough. I had a pen recorder in this proceeding, and I put a lot of motions into this court about the court being operating illegally. And they basically just brushed them off. Well, I had this pen recorder in for the proceeding, and they're just really focusing on the issue at hand, whether everything with my car is taken care of and everything. And I'm really like, hey, you guys are operating illegally. You need to fix this. And I gave them the opportunity. And this was our little, it's about 15 or 20 seconds here. So let's see if you guys can hear it.
And is this related to your $160 ticket or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, all courts have rules, right? And I never would have even figured this out if I didn't know about that. I asked for the rules of the court when I went to file my counterclaim, and they said, we don't have any rules.
The rules of superintendent are wonderful, except 90% of the courts are out of compliance. I have a case now. It's an estate case. The rules of superintendents for estate cases require estates to be closed in 6 months. It's been open for 14 years.
Okay. All right, that's enough. But yeah, basically he's saying, yep, they don't matter.
Rules don't matter.
The rules
That's what the judge says.
That's exactly 90% of the courts out there are out of compliance. So, I mean, here's something people can do. If you learn how to do this stuff, and James has got his page, Affidavits 101, Alphonse has his page, the doc has his page, he's got jurisdiction area on Telegram. We can help, and we can start going after these public officials, these local courts, and getting them to operate correctly. And that's what we need to do. And I hope that was what Randy got through on his episode, that we need to start taking on these little guys. We need to start taking on our local municipalities and our communities and our counties and getting them whipped into shape, because the rules are awesome. They really are. Rules for the courts to follow, for the counties to follow, in their county charters and things like that. They are amazing. America on paper is an amazing place to live. And it really is.
America on paper. I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm writing it down.
If we can get just a few people, in maybe some of the bigger areas, we need like 15 or 20. But if we can get 3 to 5 people per county and start going after these guys, and like Randy said, when you start looking, you will find so many avenues to go after them, because they live in breaking the law every single day, and they don't know, because most of them just don't read it. They don't read anything about their rules. They don't read anything about what the law says they're supposed to do. All they do is this person before them taught them, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and they never looked any further. That's why they're in government, because they're idiots. If they could do anything,
prerequisite, by the way.
If they could do anything that would help people, then they would be out doing that. They don't. That's why they're in government. And the only way that we can fix this is we, the people, have to start going after them. In In the court.
In the
That's
court.
it. I love something Randy says. Randy says, when you walk into a courthouse, you are the baddest motor scooter in the building because you are not adherent to anything. You don't have a bar card. You don't have any of that other stuff. You are not adherent to anybody. So they have to listen to you. And you just have, if you have to force it. And one thing I want to share a meme here. I'm sure we've seen this. This is somebody we talk about frequently, Steve Emerson.
No.
It's a good one. I'm sure James has seen it, but let's see here. Share really quick. And then this is the truth about what it says. I mean, about the system. And once it'll load, okay. Once you understand how the system works, you know what buttons to push and how to get them to do what you need them to do. The big key to this is to be a bigger asshole than them. That's really the key to this. And if you do that well, you will prevail. That's the truth.
It is true. That absolutely is true. I mean, people forget we are citizens of a republic. What does that mean? Supreme Court has stated on the record, the United States Supreme Court has stated that, you know, Dr. Graves said one thing earlier, says two things that sound similar are never the same. However, except for one, the term citizen and sovereign is one and the same. It is not sovereign citizen, people. Do not conflate that. That is not what we're talking about. You cannot, again, they are one and the same according to the United States Supreme Court. So if you ever get one of these individuals, oh, you're just one of those sovereign citizens. Oh, hold on, Mr. Judge. Do you mean sovereign or citizen? Because they're one and the same according to the United States Supreme Court. Which one are you talking about? Because I'm confused. But he's absolutely right. When you walk into a courthouse, you hold all the power, even though you might be scared crapless. It is intimidating. It's not. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you that it's not intimidating. I'll give you another quick example. I have a friend of mine here who I'm helping out. Long story short, I think I've shared this before, Sean. He went to a school board meeting, voiced his concerns about the direction the school board was going. There's an obscure law here in Utah that allows the school board to issue him a notice that says he can't come onto school property. If he does, he'll be criminally trespassed. Well, hold on a second. Notice? What does that mean? I mean, what behavior did he do that constituted to get the warrant or to get that notice issued? There's all sorts of issues with this. Long story short, we've appealed this now to the district court, and we filed a motion to dismiss because, in our view, that law is unconstitutional. And guess what I found? Dr. Graves, you're going to love this. I found American jurisprudence in Seattle v. Rice, where the state Supreme Court of Washington, which, mind you, applies to everybody under the 14th Amendment, stated that laws that contain verbiage that says notices, lawful order, or verbal lawful notice are unconstitutional because they do not prescribe specifically the conduct that constitutes the issuance of the notice and what behavior is prescribed to be prohibited. So I have now put a Utah district judge in a very sticky situation because she knows that we will appeal this to the Utah Supreme Court if we have to, because this law needs to be stricken down as unconstitutional. And in that opinion, by the way, Seattle v. Rice, the justices said it is our constitutional duty to strike laws like this down. Beautiful. That is the power judges have. To Dr. Graves' point, they are the most powerful. You want to say who has the most power? It's those people.
Yep.
Because it doesn't matter what the 200, 300 idiots in Congress do. One man or woman or a collective of justices can say, nope, that's unconstitutional, strike it down.
And the people don't yet understand that the ultimate power is in the courts, their power. It's the people's power. It speaks through the courts. Without spending too much time, if you read your Bible, you find out that Moses instituted courts.
Yep.
And there were little courts in little towns, and then there was a bigger court over that, and finally they got up to the highest court. And that was the whole point of it, was if you can't redress your grievances, tell me what freedom is.
Right.
Tell me what liberty is.
No, that's right. Let me ask one final thing here. We're going a little long, guys. We're more than an hour deep, but that's okay because this is so important. As we all prepare mentally for what may be coming during the next pandemic, as we educate ourselves about how to use the courts here's my question regarding that Louisiana State Supreme Court decision, which was really based on the First Amendment, your right to practice free speech in your religion, to go to church on Sunday. They cannot lock your church down. Well, how does that apply, or does anything from that ruling, James, apply to businesses? Because during the last lockdown, we saw a complete absence of logic as mom and pop shops and restaurants were shut down, but Costco, Sam's Club, Target, and Walmart were all left open and in operation. Completely unconstitutional in my view. Should anything like that happen in the future, how do we use the courts to, okay, maybe Stephen's got something on that. How do we use the courts, and who do we go after? Because I want to go after specific people in my state the next time this happens.
I got a good answer for that one, Sean. And here's who is actually implementing this stuff: Department of Health, right? Or something like that, or local cops. So here's something that most people can do. Obviously, take Dr. Graves' course just so you understand how the process works, and you understand the rules, and you understand how to move in court, and how all that stuff works. Small claims court. Okay. So you got an idiot at a school or at a store or whatever that's giving you hassle, and he wants to trespass you or whatever. It's like 50, or it's anywhere from $20 to $60 to file a small claims suit. And it depends on what state, what your maximum is going to be. So you can file abusive process. That's in all 50 states. That's a cause of action for small claims court. You file abusive process against that guy that did that for $6,000, even $500. For $500 for most people working in a grocery store, it's going to hurt. And you beat him. That's it. Go after the next guy. Go after the next guy. Go after your county health official who's doing that. What's their defense? Oh, well, somebody told me to do this. Well, you had no proof. So you start suing these guys. In small claims court, they move really fast. That's not going to take a year to get a remedy in a small claims court. And it's
45 days, generally speaking.
They're quick. So, and those judges go through a lot of proceedings in a day. And most of the time, those are no nonsense kind of guys. And that is the people's court. That is the people's court. So in small claims court, I think that is underutilized with this kind of stuff. And I think that a lot of things can be done in a small claims court, and even using precedents like James brought up with that Louisiana Supreme Court case. And there's other ones too. And there's going to be a bunch probably following all this when this all settles by the middle of the summer. I would imagine we're going to have a lot of case law come out on a lot of the stuff that's been in the works for the past 2 years and change. But I think small claims court would absolutely land in the laps of a lot of people, because a couple $1,000 is going to hurt most people today.
Yeah. And that's a great point that Stephen brings up, that people don't realize how quick and simple and easy it is to file a complaint in small claims. It could be a 3 or 4 page complaint, 2-page complaint. It doesn't have to be long. And just, I heard Dr. Gray say that he used to keep kind of a general outline of a complaint handy, where you can keep a copy of it. And if somebody does something stupid, you can give them advance notice. This is part of that administrative process. If you're so inclined, say, hey, you done screwed me over. Prepare to be sued. If otherwise, make me whole or prepare to be sued. Basically, small claims is a great way to do that.
Let me tell one quick story. It won't take long. It's a long time ago. I hadn't been a lawyer, I don't know, 6 months. And I hope I'm not taking too much time, Sean, but so a lady came to me. She was a Korean nurse. Her name was Walso. I won't say her last name, but she called me and she said, "Oh, Mr. Glaves," that was her Korean accent, very poorly done. She said, "Oh, Mr. Glaves, Baloo freaks." And when I finally figured out what you're talking about, she had one of these Pontiac T-tops. And I'll get to the point here in a minute about making it easy for people that don't want to have to pay the fee. So she had a Pontiac T-top. The roof leaked, as many of them did back then. And so we had a lemon law in Florida. I read the lemon law that anybody could do. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to read a law. And it said that we had to give the dealership or the putative defendant an opportunity to cure before we could collect on this lemon law thing. So I wrote up the complaint, and I kept it as simple as possible, alleged the necessary elements. And then I drafted an interrogatory, and I asked them to give me the identities of everybody who's ever had a leaking T-top, and to identify all shops, local shops that have had to do repairs on a T-shop, leaking T-top. And then there was a request for admissions, just 2 or 3. There weren't many. Request for production, that was a good one too. I wanted to have copies of all memoranda between dealerships and General Motors. And by the way, General Motors was a defendant here, and the local dealership that had to do with fixing these leaking T-tops. Well, you see, we didn't even have to go to court. Didn't have to even go to court. And the lawyer for General Motors had lived in, he was part of the law firm that owned 3 floors of a skyscraper in downtown Tampa. Called me on the phone, and I swear to you what he said. He said, "Mr. Graves, we've heard of your reputation." Now, I'd been a lawyer maybe 6 months. I don't know where he got the idea I had a reputation, but they wanted to settle, because all I had was a pleading that anybody could write once you understand just a few things that you can learn quickly. A request for admissions, simple thing, request for production of documents, and interrogatory. Well, I didn't have to go to court, didn't have to pay the filing fee. And people can do this on a big case. Doesn't have to be small claims. You do it on a big case, and when they see it, they're going to share it with their lawyer if they have one. And the lawyers, if the biggest problem they're going to have is for the lawyer to lie to them, which lawyers do sometimes, because he thinks he's going to make a lot of money, he'll bill on this one. But if they have a brain and they end up getting a decent lawyer, they're going to want to settle immediately. They're not going to want to have to produce all those documents. And guess what? If I'd had to go through with this, they would have had, there would have been truckloads of documents.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't always have to go to court, but you do have to do the paperwork and put ink on paper instead of blood on sand.
That's a great example. That's a great example. Thank you for that. And thank you for your time today, Dr. Graves. I really do appreciate this conversation. I'm going to give everybody one final word, last word, shout out your Telegram pages. Yeah, so maybe we'll start with you, Stephen.
Well, I don't have my own Telegram channel, but I frequent in Dr. Graves and James's and Alphonse's and Randy's now. Well, I've been in Randy's Mask Law Society for a while, but I didn't know about his other one actually until he was on with you. So, but yeah, I'm in all of those. I'm the Thinking Roughneck. I mean, any questions, man, I can help. Or I'll get you to the people that can.
All right. And what's the best way for people to contact you?
On Telegram.
On Telegram. As the Thinking Roughneck?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And James, I know you're big on Telegram too now, huh?
Yeah. So I've got a page that I can't claim any credit for. Some great women that I was fortunate enough to be connected with when I first got started set this up for me. But it's Affidavits 101 is my Telegram group. I mean, it started on educating people what affidavits are. Now, there's been a big misconception that affidavits move people. They don't. Just real quick, people know that motions are what move the court. Affidavits support those motions. Mm-hmm. And that's another little quiver in your arrow, is that when you support your motions with affidavits, the other side must, and I repeat, they must counter with a counter affidavit. If they don't, it's gospel truth. And that is why I'm winning my case. So Affidavits 101, reach out to me on Telegram. James the Patriot is my Telegram handle. I did want to answer your question. You asked, Sean, what about these businesses? Yes. I would say, look to the Constitution. Look at the Fifth Amendment. Look at the 14th Amendment. It's very clear. No one can be denied life, liberty, or property without due process of law. No one. So if the government comes in and shuts you down and prohibits you from being able to earn a living, what you create is your property. They just denied you property. They just denied you your Fifth Amendment rights without due process. And it's just like Dr. Graves says, it's going to take somebody, unfortunately, being the willing victim to go through this process. But I can guarantee you when something big like this happens again, it will never happen again, which is I have a feeling that my case, given the way that the opposing attorney has acted, I have a feeling she's going to be dumb enough to take this all the way there and actually make the court rule on this. Because when they do, it's public record. Anybody can see it. So I hope so. I'm willing to be that guinea pig. I hope so. But
Yeah, I hope so too. And I know you'll keep us posted. And I've really grown to respect you and Stephen and Dr. Graves. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to meet you now for the second time. I'll show your website here. People who want to get educated may do so at howtowinincourt.com. Yes, you can win in court with or without a lawyer. Be your own lawyer. I guess that's what James is doing. Dr. Graves, you get the final word.
Well, we have a republic if we can keep it. I think that's what Benjamin Franklin said. If we leave it up to the lawyers and the politicians, it's a slippery slope. But Rosa Parks no longer sits on the back of the bus. People with dark skin can go to school with people with light skin. If you get arrested, they have to give you a Miranda warning because a man named Miranda went to court, changed the law. And no matter what it is that you don't like about the law, if you want to change it, you can write letters to your congressman, see what that does. You can carry signs in the street, set fire to police cars, or you can learn how to go to court. That's how we change the law without waiting till November. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, fellas. Great to see you. Great to hear from you.
yes, thanks, Dr. Graves.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. Graves. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, James. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
No problem, buddy.
All right. And friends, thank you so much for tuning in. A special thank you to our subscribed stars and our members at sgtreport.tv, where we have that handy dandy server beyond the reach of Big Brother. And for real news every single day for free, friends, visit us directly at sgtreport.com. It's the antidote to corporate propaganda and Mockingbird mainstream media lies. May God bless you and your family. Bye-bye.
But keep an eye on this Conan base, because I think this is the location of what I could say is one of the 3 large UFO crafts under the ice. And there it is. Same GPS coordinates. And I think the Germans found this in the 1930s.